Right on. All right, what's up, everyone? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the stream. It's going to be a shortish one tonight. Won't go for too long, but I've got a spare moment, so I'm going to jump on, have a quick chat. Please double tap to boost the stream in the algorithm, get more people in here. That's what we want first off. Just lots of people in the room to listen in, hear some ideas maybe they've not heard of before. And the more people get in here, the more people are going to jump in the chat too, you know. That's ultimately what we want. We want some people in the chat, ideally, who see the world differently to me, people who believe in gods or a god of some kind, you know. We're going to hash it out. You can tell me why you believe in that god or those gods, and I'll give you my opinion on that evidence, I suppose, and we'll just see how we feel about it, you know. Bear with me while I set up the goal. Any gifting, thank you so much to everyone who's tapping so far. I very much appreciate that. The more you tap, the more people are going to get sent in here, and that's what we want. Thank you so much. Any gifting or subscriptions will basically go towards this stream. I'm just going to pump it right back in. I'm trying to save up for a bit of a desktop setup, like a proper streaming rig, so maybe I can do some actual content commentary, that kind of thing. I've just posted my first video to YouTube, by the way, so that anyone who misses one of these chats or who would just like to relive one or whatever, you can head over to the YouTube channel, which is linked up in my bio here on TikTok. There's no editing or anything done. G'day, Jamila and Michael, whichever one of you it is. Fantastic to have you. There's no editing done. It's literally just this recording uploaded over there so people can catch up if they missed out. Thank you so much for the finger hearts. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I mean it. You know, I really do wish that I could do this all day, every day. And that's just not going to be possible if I don't start building up somewhat of a network, you know. I've got to hook all of my... you don't see the link? Oh, okay. In that case, you should be able to simply type in Daniel_Green_ in YouTube, and I should come up. My profile picture should be the same. It should just be me, little like 5-year-old me with a martini cup. It should be the same thing. But yeah, so that's kind of cool. Who knows what that YouTube channel might become over time. Like I said, I'd love to be putting together more comprehensive content, you know. If it asks, what's your favorite dinosaur? And don't say chicken. My favorite dinosaur, man, they're all so cool, right? I know when I was little, I was just fully into dinosaurs. Absolutely loved dinosaurs. I don't know if I can go past the Triceratops though. I don't know what it is about the Triceratops. I always just thought that the Triceratops was the coolest. I don't know exactly why. You know, they're not the fastest or the strongest or like even necessarily the most weird or interesting. I think I just liked the way they looked or something, you know what I mean? I think they just look cool. They got like 3 horns and a big frilly like crest. They just look kind of cool. Couldn't tell you why. But cool question. How about yours? What's your favorite dinosaur? You tell me. Yeah, but amazing. Already at 3K likes. There's already 40 of you in here. Thank you so much. I'm very, very grateful for any time and attention. I really do think that it's the most valuable thing that any of us have. So thank you for sharing, you know, I really do mean that. Let's see what is going on here. Let's see if we've got any. BATGOD. This could potentially... BATGOD, hello. BATGOD, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, look, before we get into it, thank you so much for your time, man. I really do think
Oh,
it's the
thank you,
most
brother. Thank
valuable
you.
thing you got. Thanks for sharing. Do you believe in a God?
Yes, I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, basically Jesus
All
Christ.
right.
I believe I'm a
Yahweh?
Christian. Yeah, yeah,
Yahweh,
Yahweh, yeah.
Jesus Christ? Cool.
Sure.
Can you tell
Mhm.
me why?
Because like it just own experience. Like I've had
Oh,
a
okay.
lot of like mainly synchronicity, like synchronicity experience, like seeing that all the time. like seeing my thoughts manifest and like hearing God's voice in my head, like not like necessarily his voice, but like hear him say something prophesy in my head, and then it happened in front of me, like a few minutes later, like stuff like that happened all the time to me, man.
Can you
So
describe that? Could you perhaps describe that experience to us, Bat God?
like basically like for example, my lucky number is 33, so like I would like just randomly be driving, and then a car will get in front of me that had that on the license plate, bro. Either that or 44, like that's an example.
Got you.
Or I'll be thinking of a color like purple, and then somebody will walk out of the store or with favorite color purple, like whatnot, like it's stuff like that, little stuff
Got
like
you.
that. And
Have you ever heard of the cluster illusion before?
what's the cluster illusion?
Sure. So it's the tendency to perceive coincidence as being
Coincidence, yeah.
significant.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
It
I
doesn't,
understand that. Yeah.
yeah. It doesn't mean that coincidence is significant. It just means that it feels like it is sometimes, right? So
Okay.
take numerology, for example, right?
Yeah.
Especially in a system like ours, which only has 10 digits.
Mhm.
If you have a lucky number, particularly if it's a small lucky number, one or two digits, the
Yeah.
chances of you seeing that lucky number are relatively high. It's actually not very unlikely
Hmm.
that you'll
Interesting.
see that lucky number throughout the day. And
Hmm.
now, obviously, if you have an emotional attachment to a particular number,
Hmm.
you're already going to be on the lookout for that number. Other numbers exist probably just as frequently, but you don't notice those because you're already filtering
Oh
that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
information out. Yeah.
Like that's the
So,
thing though. Like I don't look for it. Like like it literally finds me. Like I'd be like scrolling on Instagram, and then I see that number pop up on my feed, bro. Like I
sure.
really literally RKO out of nowhere, or I'll
Well,
be
are you are
driving in the car
you
that's doing past me with that number.
Are you noticing these numbers here too? Like there's
Yeah,
the number
yeah, oh yeah,
64 and 2113, 5.2, 10. So these numbers are here as well, but you probably don't have an emotional attachment to those
yeah, yeah,
numbers,
yeah.
do you?
Yeah, some people probably do have type into different numbers like
Yeah.
that. Somebody probably saying, "Oh, 61 is my lucky number," so like that'd be significant. But like it's each like significance is a relative, right? So like each person perceives each number relative to what they think it should be. Like and at the same time, like who is the author of coincidence, bro? Like who creates coincidence, man? They're like all these events that had to happen for you to see that one number, bro. Like it just
Well, no,
astronomical
that's
how a man cannot do that, but God can only orchestrate that event for you to see that.
Well, back God, to be fair, the
Hmm.
chances are just as good of you seeing any of these other numbers that you can find on the
Yeah,
screen right now as well.
yeah,
Just as
yeah,
many
really.
events, just as many events have occurred
Yeah,
leading up to these numbers appearing as well. So
interesting.
do you really believe that there's any good reason to actually think that any one number has significance over any other?
Well, I think like really like all numbers have significance because like numbers are neither good or bad. They're relative. They're relative to like people make them good or bad. They say it's like William Shakespeare said, "There's nothing either good or bad, but
Yeah,
thinking makes it so." I
I
love that quote by William
agree.
Shakespeare. Yeah.
So
Uh,
that God, this is interesting to
mm,
me because what you've just
mm,
said
mm.
basically kind of debunks what you were saying a little bit earlier about the number
Yeah.
33 being particularly
Yeah.
significant. Because I agree with what
Yeah.
you just said, is
Yeah.
we tend to project importance and meaning into things that aren't
Uh-huh.
necessarily important. This is another psychological phenomenon called apophenia,
Oh yeah,
right? We
I
we
think I think about that before. Hmm.
yeah. So I'm wondering at this point, do you still really think the same way that you did maybe 5 minutes ago that
Yes,
that number is actually that significant?
yes, because like really, I think that number stands for God judgment because like Jesus died at 33, and then like he died at 33, and then like three is a very mysterious number. Like so many things come in three. Like you got the mother, the father, and the child. That's three. You got the sun, moon, and the earth. That's three. You got the body, soul, and spirit. That's three. Like so many things come in three. That triangle is three sides, and like it's the strongest geometric shape. So like so many things come in three. Like that's why I say three is the magic number.
Sure. But God, do you recognize that I could say
Okay,
the same thing about any number? Like I could do the same thing right now with the number four, right? I could say
okay, okay.
four is this incredible number because
Hmm.
I have four limbs. I got two arms and two legs. It's also
Yeah.
incredible because in Chinese mysticism, there are the four main elements. It's
Yeah.
also
Mhm.
when you watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, there are the four nations.
Yeah. For yeah.
Also,
In the square. Yeah.
the square is, in my opinion, the most beautiful shape, and there's
Yeah.
four
I
corners
understand.
and
I
four
understand. Yeah.
sides, and everything's
Mhm.
equal. So, do you recognize that someone could say that about any number?
Yeah. And that is true. That is
Mm,
true. That's true. I do believe that. But like,
mm.
do you know what synchronicity is? The
I
meaningful
understand
coincidence.
what synchronicity is
Yeah.
claimed to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like Carl Jung is the author
Yes.
of like he coined the term synchronicity, and I even had a synchronicity event where I literally thought of I call it nature synchronicities, where I think of a word or event and it happens. For instance, like I think it's about to rain outside. Like it be clear, or it be cloudy. Like one time I was in the park and it was cloudy. And then I like cloud, like no sun at all. And then I went to the park and prayed to God, like, God, please make the sun come out. And then all the clouds
Mm.
dispersed and it was sunny outside. Like that happened multiple times,
But
man.
yeah, sure thing.
Mhm.
That God, I know that when I was younger, whenever we would drive to the mall, right?
Yeah,
My mum, who's deeply religious, she would
yeah.
often pray that God would give her a parking spot because they were
Oh yeah,
always
yeah,
so
yeah,
busy and full, and she would
yeah,
pray while we were driving around that God would provide her with a parking spot, and then eventually we would find one, right?
yeah, yeah.
But
I be doing that too. I be in parking spaces
yeah,
like up front too. Like it'd be like the third parking space too, the number three,
yeah,
third parking space from the front. So it'd be like little winks like that.
sure. But back God,
Hmm.
what also happens is that now I don't pray at
Okay.
all, and I
You don't
still
pray at
get
all. Okay.
parking spots.
Yeah, yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I
I
don't see,
understand.
and the thing is also when you don't ask for it to rain, it sometimes still rains too, right? So
Yeah,
can
yeah,
you
yeah.
see that it's
Yeah.
actually not your prayer
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
actually triggering these things? It's actually just these are things that normally happen, and you're projecting significance into them again. Do you recognize this?
Yeah. So he's saying prayer does not
Mm.
work at all. So he's saying prayer is like like do you believe in manifestation? Manifesting like thoughts become things, law of attraction, stuff like that. New ways, mumbo jumbo.
So we know that the law of attraction is essentially just social proof, and
Yeah. So
people.
yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that.
There's nothing magical about this though. This is basically just human psychology. There's
Yeah.
nothing
I
there's
understand that.
nothing quote unquote energetic going on here in some kind of
Okay.
new age sense. This is just people look for people who are already like them.
Okay. I
That's not
understand that.
something magical or supernatural. Uh,
But do you think humans will ever figure it out though? Will ever figure it out?
figure
Everything that's
what
going on
out?
in the universe, like all the equations and like everything that like basically like figure out the entire universe. You know how science they're trying to figure out how the universe was created. Like, will we ever figure it all out? Like, know how everything works?
Oh,
Will we eventually
sure.
get there?
I think I understand what you're saying. Like,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
are you asking me if I think that we'll ever have an answer to every question?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's a question. Yeah. Hmm.
Sure. Okay. Well, honestly, I think that the answer is probably going to be no.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
that
Okay.
doesn't prove that God exists. Have you heard of
Hmm.
the God of the gaps before?
The God of gas. What is that?
Sure. So this is a pretty common argument brought up by religious people or people who believe in the supernatural, that kind of thing. It's essentially the claim that whenever it is that we can't explain something or that we don't have an answer to something, that's where God is. That
That's
doesn't
where
really
God
make
is. Okay.
sense, though. That doesn't really
I
make
understand
sense,
that.
though, does it? Because if we look at
Yeah.
history, we used to think that all kinds of perfectly natural and explainable phenomena were due
We're
to this
understanding. Yeah.
God
By
or that
science.
God or whatever
Hmm.
God, right? Think about it
Hmm.
like this. If you were born into a culture that lived on a volcanic island in the
Oh.
Pacific
Yeah.
Ocean,
It's like
you'd probably get raised to believe that there's a spirit that's in charge of the volcano, right? And
Yeah.
if you don't sacrifice enough food or whatever to this deity, then the volcano will erupt.
Yes.
You don't
Yeah.
you have no other
Yeah.
explanation.
I
All you
understand that.
know
Like,
is that every now and then the volcano goes off, And the elders in your tribe, they tell you that it's because you didn't make enough sacrifices or something, you know.
Okay, okay.
You don't actually know what is causing the volcano to erupt.
Yeah, I understand that.
So you just kind of fill in that space with, oh, there must be a spirit or a God that does it. This is called the
Yeah.
God of the gaps argument. But what we know is that
Hmm.
given the passage of history and the more that we learn about how the universe works through scientific inquiry, we have
Mm.
less and less gaps that we
I
need to
understand that.
put
I understand
God
that.
into. Yeah. So to
Yeah.
say that the fact that we might not ever have an answer to every question means that there must be God, that doesn't make sense. That's basically jumping to a conclusion that we don't have to jump to.
Okay. So are you saying humans are their own God?
No, I don't
Like,
think
like,
I
like,
said
like,
that at all. No.
or are you saying humans project their own God figure?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think I think
I
that
agree
what
with you.
tends to happen is that humans project uh, in like the belief that there's an entity responsible for this or that or whatever phenomenon. I think that they project that into reality, and they tell themselves that it's true because it feels. We like to have explanations for things, right? That's basically what it
But
comes down to. We're not
what
we're not
causes
really
that inner?
comfortable not knowing, so we make up
Yeah.
answers sometimes, even if they're not right.
But isn't everything in science just a theory, like the Big Bang theory, everything in science is a theory. It's not really a fact. It's
This is
not
a
really
really
cold
good
hard fact.
question. This is a really
Hmm.
good question, man. So, in the scientific field, the word
Hmm.
theory means something quite different to what it means
Okay.
if you're just having a regular conversation with any typical person, right? In
Okay.
science, the word theory refers to any body of evidence that is consistent and coherent and points towards what's likely to be the best answer, right?
Okay.
So think about it like this. The
Hmm.
theory of evolution, for example,
Yep.
in
Exactly.
science, we refer to it as a theory because all of the evidence points to that being true.
Hmm.
In science, however, we're never proud enough to say that we absolutely know for sure that
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
exactly the only possible answer. We always leave
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
just
Always
an
a little. Yeah.
infinitesimally small chance that we might be wrong and there might be evidence we haven't seen yet
Yeah.
that would
Exactly. Yeah.
debunk the theory, right? And
Yeah.
that's why science is so much more powerful than, say, a religion or a new age spiritual framework or something like this. Because in a
But isn't
religion, what
science just another
happens?
religion too? If that's true and science don't have
No.
all the answers, you gotta have faith to create that hypothesis, right? You
No.
gotta have some type of faith to really go after ask a question. Let's say oh, how was the sun created?
No.
Somebody gotta ask a question like, yeah, you gotta have
Yeah,
some type
sure.
of
So
faith
that's not
that some type of faith that you'll find the answer. You believe in yourself. That faith your belief in yourself will cause you to find the answer to that problem. So what is that inner
cool.
thing in us that makes us strive for that answer? That
So
I'll say
this
that like God given trait.
Sure. So this is just our curiosity. Faith
Curiosity,
is
yeah,
very
yeah.
different to curiosity, yeah. So
Mm,
faith is basically pretending to have certainty about something that you
mm.
cannot have certainty about.
Oh yeah,
Anytime that's
I see what you mean.
yeah,
I see
any
what you mean.
time that someone uses the word faith, you can
Mhm.
replace that word with the phrase pretending to have certainty when you can't actually have certainty. This is not something that scientists do. So, like I said, even though
Mm.
all of the evidence that we have supports the theory of evolution being true, and that's why we treat it as fact,
Okay,
we don't have to have faith in evolution being true because
okay.
we're not claiming to have 100% certainty. We're claiming to be almost entirely certain. You see, it's kind of
Okay.
this little safeguard that
Yeah, I
science
understand.
uses. That's why science is
But
so much more useful than faith or religion.
okay,
Um,
okay.
it
If a
also doesn't
science is so
take
much more
faith
useful,
to ask a
it
question like, how did the sun form or how did the stars form? That doesn't take faith. That's just curiosity. That's
yeah,
very
yeah, it's
different.
true, I understand. But if science is this holy grail, like why hasn't it figured out the basic human issues of like love that never as you love thyself or treat others how you want to be treated? Why hasn't science figured out the basic human problem yet?
So these are philosophical questions, more or less. So a
Yeah, yeah,
question
yeah.
like
Mhm.
science and philosophy are concerned with different things.
Yeah,
Science
yeah, I
is
understand.
all that science does is it helps us figure out what is accurate and what is inaccurate. That's all
Okay.
science does. So if you ask uh, a question like, uh, why haven't we figured out how to make
Like
everyone
deep, gotta
treat
be
each other
deep.
nicely?
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah. You're
could
right. You're right.
approach that scientifically. You'd probably
Yeah.
go and ask maybe some geopoliticians, or sorry, some political scientists. You might ask some
Mhm.
psychologists or some
Yeah.
sociologists, and they could give you
Mhm.
some really good theories that probably
Yeah.
actually answer the question quite well. But
Okay.
they're
I
not
understand.
necessarily that it's not necessarily that science gives you like a formula to follow right off the bat. If you ask a question like, why haven't we figured out how to make everyone cooperate yet? That's something we can approach that scientifically, like I said, but that as a question, that's beyond the scope just of science. That's something that
Oh,
we can just talk about it right now. You and I can
so
ask,
you
why do
agree
you
that
think we don't
science
all
cannot
treat
figure
each
out
other
everything.
nicely?
So you agree that science cannot figure out everything.
We can use
Like science.
no no
You use science. Yeah.
we can use the scientific method to
Yeah.
approach any question, but it's
Okay.
not necessarily going to answer it in the way that maybe you want it to, right? So
Yeah.
if you ask a question like, how come we haven't yet figured out how to make everyone treat each other nicely? You
Mhm.
could approach it scientifically if you want. And like I said, you'd probably talk to a sociologist and a psychologist, maybe even an evolutionary biologist. I don't know. And
Yeah. And
they'd give you some pretty good information that might help you piece it together. Things like, well,
yeah,
we
that's
tend
true.
to be biased towards people that we're already used to. We tend to
Yeah,
be
that's true.
biased towards people who look like us. We tend to be
Okay.
biased towards people that we think will benefit being in our community. We tend
Hmm.
to be biased towards those who are already unmarginalized. So
That's
there's
true.
all
That's true.
kinds
Yeah.
of cognitive biases that maybe a psychologist could explain to you that actually
Mhm.
help answer the question. Um, but
But
it's
again,
not
yeah,
just
Christian
a question
psychologist
for
too, don't
science.
you?
We also use philosophy for this kind of thing too. We don't need religion
Yeah.
though. That's the
Yeah.
point, basically.
But yeah, but at the same time, like there are Christian scientists though, really. They're Christian,
Yeah,
like
that's
how do
right.
you explain Christian scientists?
Well, at the same time, there are also Islamic scientists, and
Yeah, true that. Yeah,
There are also
yeah,
Hindu
yeah, that's true.
scientists, right? There are
True.
also Buddhist
Okay.
scientists. There are
Yeah,
potentially
true.
even Scientologist scientists, right? Which is
So
particularly
yeah,
hilarious
Scientology scientists, heck no.
because
That's funny.
Scientology is
That's
straight up
yes.
bonkers, right? But
Yeah,
the point is
it's
that
wow.
in the same way that you know how there are some police officers
Hmm.
who abuse their power,
Yeah,
right?
people use it for the wrong reason. Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and there are some teachers who aren't very good at educating.
That's true.
There are also some scientists who are biased towards their own religion,
Oh, yeah,
right? So
true. Okay.
you can have a religion and be a scientist, and you might even be very good at your job, but you may
Hmm.
still be biased towards your own religion, which I think is unwise. I think that's honestly being a little bit dishonest with yourself.
I understand that. It's like the
Yeah.
old saying, like no one sees what you see, even if they see it too. We all see things differently. So like if I come up with a hypothesis and you come up with a hypothesis, we'll like we'll either agree or we'll see it differently from our perspective.
And this is where philosophy, in particular, branches of
Hmm.
philosophy like epistemology and logic.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
where they come in because they teach us
Mhm.
how to think
Yeah. I think.
rationally and
Yeah. Okay.
reasonably and actually
Hmm.
figure out what's more likely to be true
Hmm.
between this claim or that claim, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, if there is someone who is a scientist and they believe in the scientific method and they
Hmm.
value logic and they also subscribe to a religion like, say, Christianity,
Okay.
they can only really continue to do that insofar as they refuse to examine their own faith in comparison with others.
Okay.
Because if you look at another person's faith, well, if you're a religious person and you look at another person's religion and you say, uh, the evidence isn't good enough for me there. I don't agree with their book. I don't agree with their morality. that other religious person, the evidence that they tend to have for their religion being true, it's usually basically the same standard of evidence that every other
Yeah,
religious person has.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they
It's
could
like
say the
Islam to
same.
Christianity, basically.
That's
Mhm.
right. They could say the
Yeah, yeah,
same thing about you, right?
yeah.
Now,
That's
when
true.
you've got two competing claims, right?
Yeah,
So, say for example, Christianity is a competing claim with Islam, right?
Islam.
They
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
agree with each other.
yeah, yeah.
At least one of them, just logically speaking, right? At least one of them has to be wrong. There's also
That's
a
true. That's true.
chance,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. You're right.
There's
There's a chance.
also a chance that they're both wrong, and that the
That's
correct
true.
answer is actually somewhere else.
Yeah,
So,
some way out of nowhere. Yeah.
yeah, and this is the problem with religions, is because
Hmm.
religions rely upon evidence of a very low standard, whereas
Hmm.
scientific theory relies upon not only sufficient evidence, but also peer review. So you have to ask everyone else in the scientific community to fact check and double check what you think you've found. And if they come back and they say, "Oh, I found this problem here, you missed this," that's when you go, "Oh, hey, thank you so much. I'm glad you pointed that out. Now we don't have to potentially be misled by this information." Whereas, unfortunately, in a religion, it's the opposite. The
Hmm.
claim is made to begin with, and when someone brings facts to the table that don't fit with the religious claim, the religious people go, "Oh, well, that mustn't be true then." Do you see how it's the
Hmm.
opposite way round with
Yeah, 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 yeah,
science?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like science
that's
is open to like all like questions, but like the religion, like we stick to what we stand on, basically. Yeah,
yes,
I said what you're
yes,
saying. But
that's
okay,
correct.
but with that question, like Christians, like we base our faith like what got me like I used to be like New Age, law of attraction, and then what really got me to the Bible was Bible prophecy, man. Like you cannot science cannot
Sure,
explain Bible prophecy, man.
we
Like
can. Yeah,
just or
we
how
can.
do you explain like King Cyrus, how God prophesied King Cyrus in the book of Isaiah, and then he manifested later on as the king of Babylon, like in later chapters.
Sure,
And history actually proves that.
sure. So, in the same
Mhm.
way that if you understand a little bit about politics, you can make really good predictions about who will get elected next. Do you
No,
see
no,
this?
like this
So,
happened like 100 years afterward, like hundreds of years afterward, after Isaiah
yes,
died. It happened like 100 years or so. So you can
yeah.
say a prophet, like so a prophet, like so you don't believe in prophets, right? Like people that foresee the future
I
or like do that.
I understand that people claim to be prophets, yeah, but I don't
Mhm.
believe that prophets are actually doing anything supernatural or divine. No, I think they're taking advantage of cognitive blind spots and also chance and probability, basically. So think
What
about
if someone mastered the art of
this
chance, bro?
prophecy that
Is that possible?
this prophecy that you've
Mhm.
just referred to.
Mhm.
First of all, we don't actually know that that prophecy was even definitely made. It
Hmm.
just says that it was made in the Bible. But the Bible also says all kinds of other stuff that's completely made up. So just
All right.
because the
Give
Bible
me an example.
says that someone made a prophecy, that doesn't mean that it actually happened, right? I could
Well,
write a book that says, you know, oh, it's incredible. 100 years ago, this
repeat
one
right there.
particular person predicted that Donald Trump would get elected in 2020 or
Oh, yeah,
whatever year
Simpsons.
it
Yeah,
was.
Simpsons. Yeah. This is
You
the
know what
like.
I,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, if we're talking about The Simpsons, I wasn't even talking about The Simpsons, but if we
Oh,
talk
yeah,
about The
yeah. But
Simpsons for a moment,
that was an example.
that's just the cluster illusion again. Because
Yeah.
this, if you make that many episodes, like it's the longest running animated TV show in history, then the chances of something at random in that show seeming to be prophetic, the chances get higher and higher the longer that TV show runs and the further into history we go. This is just mathematics. So this is not good
Okay.
prophecy. This is actually really terrible prophecy. Now,
Have you read the Bible
the
before? Like,
difference,
have you ever sit down and read the Bible?
excuse me?
Have you read the Bible before? Like, have you sit down and actually read the Bible, or have you not?
Yes. So I was born into a Christian family,
Oh, okay.
and I've also studied Christian theology at university. I've read the
All right.
Bible a couple of times. Yeah, the Bible is awful.
It's awful. All right. Why do you
Yeah.
say the Bible is awful? Like, why do you say that?
Yeah, sure. Well,
I want
in
to know why you
terms
say that.
of sure thing. Okay,
Mhm.
Corey. In terms of how accurate it is, or how likely it is to be accurate about many of the things that it claims, uh, it's terribly inaccurate. It's incredibly unlikely because the evidence in support of so many of the claims in the Bible is terrible. It's just as good as a lot of the evidence that supports the claims in lots of other religious textbooks too. Hey, thank you so much. Um,
Amen.
and that's a big problem, right? Because if the evidence in support of the Bible is just as strong as the evidence that supports a lot of these other religious texts, then why should we believe that any one of them is the only true one? Do you see? It doesn't logically make any sense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I
Also,
understand.
these books have been retranslated and used for different political purposes by different groups and recompiled. They've had books and chapters taken out. They've
Yeah,
had books and chapters put back in again. The
that's true.
book that you know and read these days is completely different to the most excuse me, the most original manuscript that anyone ever compiled. Um, Not to mention I could keep going down that road if you want, but honestly, we
Man,
could even talk
let
about
me
the
say,
morality. You know, we could even talk about
like,
the morality described. If in
oh yeah,
Morality
of
is
course.
ultimately subjective, so this is just my opinion. Thanks so much, Matt. I should say. I really, really appreciate the subscription. Thank you so much.
The Bible goes
This is
against
this
The
is
Bible
just
goes
my
against all man's desires, bro. Like the Bible basically goes against all man's desires.
no.
Like it goes
That's
against
not true.
temptation. Well,
That's not true.
it does
So
like that's so hated because it goes against our natural affection. Like we want to have sex with we want
no.
to have sex with multiple women. Like and the Bible says no, one woman, marriage, one man, one woman, or multiple wives. But like
No.
we want to like basically sin. Like we like to sin. We like to do the thing that God don't say, but the Bible says do something this way. We say no, we ain't doing it that way. Like the Bible is the only book that really goes against human nature.
No, so this is not
Obviously.
true because there are people
Mhm.
who do only want to marry one person. So it's
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
true to say that that's an
Okay.
example of something that applies to everyone. That's an
Yeah, yeah,
example
yeah.
of something that
No,
applies to
right.
some people. Okay. We could also
Okay.
say that if you agree with the morality in the Bible,
I do. I really
okay,
do.
then you're have you read, okay, let's maybe go here. Have you read, say, Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 28 to 29?
Or Deuteronomy 28, yeah, yeah, I was just saying like how God will play curses on people and whatnot, yeah.
No,
I know.
that's not that part. No.
Oh, okay, well like that part it just is like gruesome as the one you're talking about too, because
So
like it says
do
like
you know what Deuteronomy? I mean, we can just I'm just picking on one bit. We could do others
yeah
as
yeah
well, but
yeah yeah yeah.
do you know what Deuteronomy chapter 22 verses 28 to 29 says?
All right, what do it say?
Sure. So that particular verse of chapter 22 in Deuteronomy says that, and this is a law that God supposedly told Moses he was to make everyone else follow. It says that if you have a daughter and she's a virgin
Mhm.
and someone rapes her, then you have to accept 20 shekels of silver from that rapist in exchange for marrying them off to their rapist.
But like
Okay, this is just
that's an ancient time though. Like God that
well,
like
hold on,
God
Matt.
when Jesus died on the cross, like he ended that animal sacrifice law. Like
Well,
that law was
this
ended.
means that God changes his mind about things, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
like God
So
did
if
not change. Yeah, but
so
like
if God
yeah,
if God changes his mind about things, then not even his morality is objective, right? Not to mention, just because even if Yahweh is real, and remember, we don't have any proof that Yahweh is real. He's just the God that the this particular tribe of Middle Eastern patriarchal like shepherds believed in. Uh, Even if Yahweh is real, we don't have to agree with
yeah.
his morality. We're allowed to disagree with him, right?
So
We
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have to say, we don't have to go, yeah, look, I think that that's a good idea. I'm allowed to say, I'm sorry, Yahweh, but I think that's disgusting. I think
yeah,
that's
but
revolting.
Yeah, like God allows us to repent daily. Like God, the God is a patient God. He's very, very
That's not
patient,
what we're
patient and
talking
merciful
about.
God.
Bat God, that's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm not talking about
Okay.
me being able to earn forgiveness for rules that I didn't agree to. I'm talking
Okay.
about I'm saying that that rule, for example, in my opinion, is a
Mhm.
horrific rule.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
and,
don't
and
and I
yeah,
don't care
I would
I don't
agree.
care what
I would agree.
time in history God
Yeah.
thinks that rule should exist. I don't think that it's ever appropriate to exchange an abused young woman with their abuser for money. I don't think that that's
Okay.
acceptable ever.
Yeah. I understand that, but it just as bad today as it was back then with all the sex trafficking and whatnot. So the U.S. is one of the leaders in sex trafficking too.
Would you
Look
would
it up.
you would you repeat that, please? I didn't catch that.
It just as bad today. Like it says in the Bible, we're living in the days of Noah. It's just as bad today as it was back in the days of Noah.
No, this is
What
not true. So
it really
currently,
is.
although we have a pretty enormous population right now, this is
Mhm.
also the most peaceful time in history. And this is even with the wars going on between, say, Ukraine and Russia and the conflict over in Palestine and Israel. The truth is that humanity has never been as peaceful overall as it is now in 2023.
So you're saying we're literally on the brink of World War III, and you're saying this is the most peaceful time that we ever had.
Yes, we're not on the brink of World War III, though. That's the
Yes,
thing.
we are. We really are, but we really are on the brink of World War III. Like I believe that, man.
So, sure, you can believe that. That's okay
Yeah,
to
yeah,
believe
that's
that.
the thing.
But God, do you think that believing something is true means that it is true?
Well, well, not somebody could say I don't believe in gravity, then jump off a cliff, and then yeah, gravity is real. Like there relative truth, and then there's absolute truth. Like gravity is an example of absolute truth, and like relative truth is like seeing colors or whatnot. I would say somebody might see a tree in a different way, but it's still a tree though. It's relative to that person, but we all see like um we're all affected by gravity, which is like a absolute truth. Like we all agree that if you jump off a cliff, like you'll fall, you'll fall to the ground. We all agree on that. That's absolute truth. And like relative truth is like what I say when I close and whatnot. Somebody might maybe be colorblind and see that color in a different shade than you do. So like there's the relative truth and then the absolute truth. And I believe that God, the Bible is an absolute truth.
Right. And believing that to be
Mhm.
absolutely true, you
Okay.
recognize that that doesn't mean that it actually is definitely true, though, right? That's what you believe.
What the evidence that I've experienced prove it to me, and okay. Say I go to a scientist like there's a Harvard graduate, like he say he's the top scientist in the world, and I go there and say, oh, my God is real. I've seen all the evidence. Like he saved me from like my testimony is something else, bro. Like it really is. Like God saved me from jail, from mental health hospitals. Like God really brought me out of that drugs, everything, man. Like God brought me out of that of that pit of darkness, man. That's why I give my life to him because, and I see evidence of him every single day. Just look outside, bro. Like none of this would be here if God never said, "Let there be light," man.
Well, back God,
The real talk, like
do you recognize that other religions say that that same kind of evidence actually proves their God?
yeah. But the Bible also talks about false gods, little g gods, and like false prophets and whatnot too, and like
Yeah.
all the other religions. Yeah,
Do,
okay, why is Jesus the greatest name in the world, man? Why is that?
do,
How can a man have a 3 year ministry and then for the next 2,000 years be the most revered name in the world, man?
got
Because
you. So what happened after? I can explain to you. So what
okay.
happened after Jesus of Nazareth disappeared
Mm.
was that uh, his cult that he had generated, because there were lots
Oh,
of
okay.
little
That's what the
cults
word.
in the Middle East at the time,
Mm-hmm.
his
The followers.
cult remained relatively small for a while, right?
Yeah.
What happened though was a little while later, uh, Emperor Constantine of Rome, his mother joined the cult of Jesus of Nazareth. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what powerful leaders understand about religion is that they're very, very powerful methods of manipulating people's behavior.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do agree with that. Yeah.
Religions have been used by people in positions of power to
Very
control
true.
their population's behavior for a very long time. It's a very popular method of crowd control, so to speak. Okay.
I understand that, but
In the same way that we often use Santa as a way to control the behavior of children throughout the year. Okay. Now, Emperor Constantine recognized that this particular little cult that his mother was in was growing a little bit. And he recognized also that it could be very, very helpful in his conquest of neighboring lands. So Constantine adopted the cult of Jesus of Nazareth and made it the state religion. He forced conversions uh, throughout his conquest, and this is why it spread so quickly. People who refused to convert were often executed,
yeah,
and people
like
who
70
did
AD,
convert,
70 AD.
and people that's right, and people who did convert, well, then they started teaching their children that Christianity was real too, right? Now, if
Yeah.
you teach someone from childhood that something is true, it's very likely that if no one ever challenges that belief, they're going to go into adulthood actually believing the same thing. And then they'll teach their children. So what we see here is literally only a couple of generations worth of indoctrination in order to take control of the behavior of hundreds of thousands of people. Okay.
So
And
you're saying
this
that
is
one
what
man
has
caused the
happened.
world to believe in. So you're saying that one man caused the entire world to believe in Jesus. That one man, because his actions
No,
caused the
no,
gospel to
it's
spread
not
across the
just
world.
no, it's not just one man. It's one man and a lot of people working for him as well. You know, Emperor Constantine is not the only person with any influence at that point in history. It's him and all the people that work for him, all the people
Okay,
that he
okay.
told to go out and force people to convert. They worked together to spread Christianity. We see the same thing happen in other religions too. You see the same thing happen in Islam, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you say something like, how come Jesus is so famous then? I could say, well, how come Muhammad is so famous? You know,
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
how come Buddha is so famous? How come
But
Elon
but
Musk is so famous? What happens is people get famous because people find them interesting, you
no,
know?
you can't put Jesus on the same level as yeah, Elon Musk on the same level as Jesus, bro. No, you can't do that, bro.
No, I'm not saying they're on the same level, but I'm
Like, yeah,
saying
you're
that
saying, yeah.
if you're using an argument like because this
Mhm.
person is very well known, they must be real or they must be
Yeah,
telling the
Jesus
truth
is real.
about being God or something. That doesn't make sense because other people do the same thing, right? And you
Okay,
don't believe
but
them when they say that they're God.
you gotta agree that Jesus is the highest name in all the lands, bro. Yeah, like
It depends on the
if you go to
land.
like any country, like, if you go to Brazil and say who was the greatest name in all creation, they'll say Jesus. Is like if
Hmm.
like you can go anywhere in the
Yeah.
world and do a general consensus, and they'll all say Jesus
No,
is the greatest name.
no, that's not true. So if you go to China,
Most
you won't.
places will. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but that's not the point, mate. Even if you do get most people to say, even if it were true
Mhm.
that most people on planet Earth agreed, and
Yeah,
there were still people who disagreed, that
yeah,
still doesn't mean it's true that Jesus is God, right? This
yeah.
is
Okay,
called
I
an
understand.
argument. This is called an argument ad populum. It basically means that if enough people believe something is true, then it becomes true. And you and I recognize that that's actually a fallacy, isn't it? That's not
Yeah,
true.
yeah, 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 yeah. You're
Yeah.
right. Like you
If
believe
you
something hard
walk
enough, yeah.
into a right, if you walk into a room full of Hindus
Mhm.
and you do a survey of everyone in that room about which religion is true, they're all going to tell you Hinduism is true, aren't
Of
they?
course, of course, of
That
course, of
doesn't
course.
mean Hinduism is true,
Hmm.
right? And the same applies to all of the other religions. Just because one particular religion has maybe the most followers at any one time, that doesn't mean that it's true.
But like, okay, well, all right. So like I'm still standing on Jesus. Jesus is God because like even in Genesis, like Jesus is in every book of the Bible, man. Even in Genesis, when in Genesis when God said the seed would come from the woman, he was talking about Jesus back then, and then Isaiah 61. Yeah, have you read
Maybe.
that? Like the whole Bible is about Jesus, man. Even the King David prophesied about Jesus. Like the whole Bible is about Jesus. Like how can you have a book like that? There's no other book like the Bible on the planet. Like even the Quran would not exist without the Bible, bro. Because the Quran came
That's
600
right.
years after the Bible. Because like
It's true that the Quran, it's true that the Quran wouldn't exist without the Bible, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that the Bible is true. It also doesn't mean that Jesus is God. What you're saying right here is also only, that's just one way to interpret the Bible. You
Okay.
don't know for sure that the Bible is all about Jesus. That's just one
I do know for sure,
particular
bro.
interpretation that you could subscribe to. Okay.
Okay.
Also,
Okay.
as I said before, particular groups have retranslated and added things into the Bible and taken other things out over the last, you know,
Oh
thousand,
yeah. I seen
almost
this video on
2000 years. Okay.
yeah.
So
I'm gonna take this
we
video
also,
on
you
TikTok
also
where
can't say
yeah,
that everything in the Bible that fits your particular interpretation is true either. Other people
but
could
but
interpret it differently, right?
but,
And
but it, it does
that
say in the
doesn't mean
Bible
that they're right either.
it does say in the Bible that the word of God is of no private interpretation. It does say that it's built off prophecy by the prophet. It does say that, and I think it's 2 Timothy 3. It said the Bible is the word of God is of no private interpretation. So we're not supposed to interpret it for
Hmm.
ourselves. God's supposed to give it the understanding that we need.
Right.
So like
Now,
you saying that you don't pray, like you're supposed to pray for understanding when you read the Bible. You can't open the book and just start reading.
right.
You gotta ask
Now,
God to open
back
up a
God,
word to you. Hmm.
back God, do you see the problem that you've just created there?
Yeah.
Because
Hmm.
what you've just said is that there's not to be any private interpretation of the text,
Yeah.
but that's not possible to avoid because everybody experiences reality from their
A different
own
way.
unique
Yeah.
subjective perspective.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no way to escape your own
Okay.
personal interpretation of all of your experience, not just the Bible,
Okay.
but everything that you ever experience. There's no way to eliminate your subjectivity.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and that is true. But it's possible to align your subjectivity with objectivity, and like let them be in perfect alignment.
Well, now you're making a claim that not even scientists make. Do you
Hmm.
see this? So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as I
Okay.
said before, scientists don't claim to have certainty about anything. They just say what's most likely to be true. Even if it's
Okay. So,
99.9% recurring, they still never say, we're absolutely certain. You can never challenge this. We're never going to let anyone challenge this claim. You're
so then
actually
again,
saying
it's
right
about
now,
belief.
you're
Then,
saying you're saying something that not even scientists would say, mate.
then again, like science is based off belief. Like one scientist saying, "I believe this to be true," and then I'm y'all all the supporting hypothesis and evidence to support this theory. But then at the end of the day, I'm not really sure if it's true or not. Like that has some type of faith in it, man.
No, no,
Because
no.
the scientists really don't know. The scientists really don't know. They had to believe in the experiment they had to have some type of faith to even start the experiment in the first place. They had
No.
to ask
So
questions. Oh,
remember,
why did yeah.
remember,
Yeah,
mate, the word faith. Remember, anytime that we use the word faith, we
yeah.
can replace it with the phrase pretending to know something that we don't actually know. And remember, that's
That's
not what
science right
science
there.
is.
You
Scientists,
just
no, no,
said
remember, scientists don't claim to know things that we don't have sufficient evidence for. And like I said,
okay.
even when we have all of the evidence lined up, we still, in science, always leave that little space for potentially being corrected. There's no faith in science. That word
Okay.
doesn't
So it's all
apply to
vanity then.
science.
So it's
Excuse
all
me?
vanity then. So it's all vanity then. Like what's the meaning of science in the first place? Like if we would never figure it all out, then what's the point of doing science? Really?
Well, we like
If
trying.
we'll never get to it, if there's no end goal to science, then what's the point of doing science? If there's no end goal,
Right.
if there's
Well,
no
the
ultimate
point of
reality of science.
sure, well, the point of doing science is we find out what is likely and unlikely about reality. So, for example,
Hmm.
through scientific inquiry, we figured out how to harness electrical charge. We figured out
Yeah,
how to take the materials in our environment and change their state. We figured out how best to combine all of this knowledge so that we
Hmm.
can create smartphones like the one that you and I are using right
Yeah,
now. We
that
also
is true.
use science to figure out how to make medicines that will work better than prayer. We use
Okay.
science to figure out what's accurate about the universe and things like how old it is and where everything comes from and how animals came to be the way that they currently are. That's the point of doing science. It's so that we actually have good reason to believe the things that we go around believing. When you
Okay.
believe something that isn't supported by scientifically proven facts, then you've got only terrible evidence to support the things that you believe. And that's not good enough for me personally.
Well, have you read the book "Atheism is Dead" by it's called "Atheism is Dead" by this Christian author. Like he has a like
No.
it's like a thick book. Like it's like a book going through all this like everything you said. Like he explains from a Christian perspective. He goes through archaeology. He goes through scientists. We can go to like quantum theory and whatnot. Like quantum mechanics and whatnot. If we went that far, they're even seeing that like they're even starting to discover spirit, man. Like science is like spirit science. I would call it. They're even starting to and discover spirit and whatnot. Quantum mechanics and whatnot.
BATGOD, do you recognize that a book written about scientific discoveries from a Christian is
Yeah,
going to be biased?
yeah, and like also a book from an atheist saying that Christianity is not the truth. Will be biased too. It goes both ways. So like I
Potentially,
would have
yeah. And this
yeah, it
is
goes both
why
ways.
science is important because science is the process of doing everything we can to eliminate bias. So, a
Okay.
scientific textbook, this is not full of biased information in the sense that it comes from some person's, one individual's subjective opinion on something.
Hmm.
We only say things are scientifically factual when they are decided to be accurate under consensus. So all of the scientists get together and they rigorously filter through all of the information we've got to decide what seems to be inaccurate and what seems to be inaccurate. We even account for bias as best we can. We don't just when a scientist like I said a bit earlier, mate, when a scientist says something, when they say they discover something, it doesn't just get put in the textbook right away. They have
Oh
to
yeah,
go, hey,
the whole
can
process. Yeah, you're right.
like I said
Hmm.
earlier, they have to go, hey, before we just believe that this is true, can everyone please check this? And if it's inaccurate in any way, I'll do it again. I'll go over again. I'll see if see if I missed something. And that happens all the time. And when that happens, a scientist goes, "Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad. I'm glad you pointed out the flaws." Do you see this?
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah, yeah.
peer-reviewed scientific inquiry is the process by which we avoid as much bias as possible. That's not got to do with atheism, and it's not got to
Oh
do with
yeah,
Christianity.
yeah. I
Okay?
understand that. I
You
understand
can be an atheist and be completely irrational and not understand
that.
science
Oh
at
yeah,
all.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's true. That's true.
And you can be a scientist and still have a religious faith.
Oh
That's
yeah,
why
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't just
yeah,
rely on one person to write a book or to
yeah, yeah.
publish a
That is
study.
true. Yeah.
We get as much as we can and we get everyone to check it. So it's not sufficient to take a book like this book that's written by a Christian person saying that uh, uh, all these scientific findings that not everyone else agrees on, pointing towards Christianity being true, points towards Christianity being true. That's not
Yeah.
sufficient. That's a
I see
heavily
what you're saying.
biased take.
But like, what if you actually read it and like seen some of his arguments? Because like anybody like you said, anybody can write a book about saying that and write a book like that. Atheism is dead. Like like anybody can write a book like that. But what's our view from reading the book? Like just because of the name, atheism is dead.
What's the pardon? Sorry.
Oh, like what's our view for reading it? It's because the name atheism is dead. Like I really like want your take on that book, man. To read that
I'm
book and
sorry.
really like.
What did
Want
you
your
ask?
take on that book.
I'm
I
so
really
sorry.
want your take on that book. You can't hear me? Am I breaking up?
What did you ask me exactly? I'm still not sure what you said.
I asked you like to read that book and like give me your opinion on it because I read like most of it and like I
No.
really like it really has some strong arguments in it.
You said something before that, but that's okay. Look,
I did.
honestly, I've read books along the same lines as that, as what it sounds like it is before. You know, religious people applying their particular worldview to scientific findings. But what we ultimately end up with a lot of the time is arguments that are put forward that rely on moving the goalposts and equivocation
I
and
see.
the God of the gaps argument and jumping to hasty conclusions and making assertions that aren't actually supported anything. So, look, there might be things in this book that I haven't heard before,
Yeah.
but I've got to be honest with you, I'm probably not going to read it because I've
I
read
understand.
other
I understand
science
that.
books by religious
That's
people,
understandable. But
and it's the same thing every time, to be honest.
it's like I think it says Second Timothy 3, I think 3:14. It says God was sending a strong delusion on this world. Like when God sends you a delusion, like they're gonna come back from it, or the reprobate, or the dreaded reprobate mind. Like humans think like we are so humans like we are so like prideful. Like we think we can do everything by ourselves. Like we think
No,
we figure out everything. And
no,
that's general human nature. I believe like we are prideful at heart. Like we think we are our own God. We want to be our own God basically. We like
no.
that's how I believe.
No,
What do you believe
absolutely
in?
not. I don't think that we can figure everything out. And I don't think that
Yeah.
scientists believe that either. What we know is that if we want to figure something out, the best way to do it is to use the scientific method. We don't
Okay.
we don't claim that we can do everything by ourselves. Everything that we have ever achieved has been done with the assistance of our community. No one achieves anything on their
Yeah.
own,
It,
you
and
know?
that is true. That's true. But yeah, that's true. But what if somebody comes along and just create a whole new scientific method? What'd you do then? Like they just come out of nowhere and just create a whole new scientific method? Because like at one point, like who
Well, then
created the
science.
scientific method?
Sure. So the scientific method has evolved, meaning it's been improved upon
Mm-hmm.
many times throughout the centuries, right? If
Mm-hmm.
someone came along with an improvement to the current
Thank you.
scientific
Thank
method,
you.
then we would
Thanks for the
accept
gift.
it. We'd want that. But at
Mm-hmm.
this point, we actually don't really have good reason to believe that there are many more improvements that can be made. We've kind of figured out how epistemology more or less works at this point. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not open to suggestion. We absolutely are.
Yeah.
We want suggestions to be made if they're valid. But the thing is, if this new method, this hypothetical new method that you're saying someone might come up with one day, if it's not better than the current scientific method, we just wouldn't use it. That's an easy one. We just go, yeah, see this method that you've brought forward. Good try, but unfortunately, it doesn't account for this, 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 and this. So, sorry, we're gonna stick to the one that we've currently got. Please come back with any further suggestions. We'd love that, but they have to be valid first. Do you see? So
Yeah.
it's not like, it's not like I could just come up with some random set of steps to replace the current scientific method with. So if it's just a random set of steps, other scientists are going to go, this doesn't make any logical sense. Why would we use this? It's kind of like
Yeah.
if I've already got a
Okay.
smartphone
Mhm.
that allows me to live stream to almost 300 people around the globe, why would I accept someone walking in with a calculator and saying, hey, you want to talk with
Oh,
people
well,
around the world? Try this
okay.
calculator. I'm just going to go,
No, I see what you're
that
saying.
doesn't work. That doesn't do what I want it to do. So why would I do that?
But what if someone does come along and actually come up with a grand new scientific method? Like, what would happen then?
Like I
What
just
somebody like
said,
the other side?
like I
Yeah,
just said, that's what we want in science. We want
yeah,
improvements. We want
evolution in science.
improvements to be provided. Yeah, but that's the thing, mate. Is that doesn't we don't really get that. It doesn't really happen. If it happens, awesome. That's what we want, but we just haven't had that. So that's why we're not really, you know, we're not really concerned with the current
Uh,
scientific method because it's working incredibly well. The current
yeah, I
scientific
agree with that.
method,
I
the
believe in
current
science.
scientific
I believe in science.
method The current scientific method is what saves lives from cancer. It's what
Okay.
inoculates people against diseases that used to kill us in the millions. It's what allows us to spread information across the globe without even having to leave our living rooms. It's what allows us to fly in aeroplanes. It's what allows us to traverse the depths of the ocean in
I see that.
submarines. Science is what gives us all of this, whereas religion only gives us feelings of there being a God. Religion doesn't actually
Okay.
give us anything particularly useful.
Man, I think Christianity gives a lot to society. Like this nation was built off Christian values. The Ten
That's not true.
Commandments. Yeah, like
No.
look it up. Like it was built off Christian
Are
values. Like
you
the Ten
American?
Commandments.
Are you
Yes, I'm American. Yes,
American?
yes. Oh yeah, American.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
Constitution
yeah, yeah.
was written by people who were at, for the sake of your argument, at best they were deists. One of them might have been a Christian, but the others were not Christian. They did not build the Ten Commandments are not written into the American Constitution. They explicitly stated that they wanted America to be a place that was not ruled by religious people.
I
They
see that.
explicitly wanted the opposite of a theocracy.
Okay. Like, but they do hold some Christian values though. Like, and I think that's why I I I swear I read a quote somewhere where like either one of the founding fathers said something about Jesus Christ, but like I forgot who, but like oh yeah, but like he basically said something about having Christianity as the foundation, like the foundation of the Constitution. Like have the Ten Commandments, the foundation, like thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, like thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not have no other god before me, like thou shalt not lie about a neighbor, thou should not covet like take anything about a neighbor. Like Ten Commandments are the basis of life. Like without Ten Commandments,
No,
like yeah,
no.
I believe that, man. Like I think we're talking.
This is not true. The truth is that the Ten Commandments, if they really were given on stone tablets to Moses on Mount Sinai, which we have no proof of. This is just a claim that the Bible makes, which isn't supported by any decent evidence. If that's true, then that just means that that's what was normal at that particular place in the Middle East 2,000 years
Okay,
ago. That doesn't
okay,
mean that that's what the standard is around the globe. There are
I know what
many
you're saying.
societies around the globe who disagree with what these Middle Eastern tribes people thought was
Yeah.
acceptable and unacceptable. Not to mention, the Ten Commandments are also kind of awful. Like, nowhere in the
Mm.
Ten Commandments does it say anything along the lines of you shouldn't rape anyone or you
Yeah,
shouldn't commit,
it does say
you
that thou
shouldn't,
shalt not commit
you
adultery.
shouldn't
Adultery.
there's all sorts of things that aren't in the Ten Commandments as well that just about
Yeah,
everyone agrees should be in there. But you've got to
yeah.
remember, mate, these books, like the Bible, they were written by patriarchal societies thousands of
No,
years
no,
ago that
no,
were run by
no,
men. These people
no.
basically
They're
just
written
said,
by
look, these are
prophets.
the
They're
rules.
written by 40
These are
different
the rules
prophets.
that God told me are the rules. You can't prove that I'm lying. So do what I'd say or you get punished. Okay.
Okay, okay. Like you're around there. Like the Bible was written by 40 different authors, and they're all Israelites.
So I'm
They're
talking
all
about
Israelites.
whoever wrote that part of the Bible.
Yeah, like the original authors of the Bible were the prophets, like Isaiah, like basically the books of the name of the book of the Bible. Like they wrote the Bible, not these
They
patriotic
claimed
figures.
to be.
Like
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
But that doesn't mean that they're
like
true though.
okay,
If I write down in my diary that today I turned my drink bottle into solid gold, right? And then 2,000 years from now, someone finds my diary and they read it. Do you think that that diary entry is sufficient evidence for that person to then believe that I actually, in the year 2023, Daniel Green, had the capacity to turn my drink bottle into gold? Or is it just something that I wrote down?
it is something that usually just happen to write down that somebody happened to pick up at a certain time. But like
That's
okay,
right, yes. In the
like
same way,
I believe
the Bible's saying things like, you know, I'll give you one from the Quran. You'll love this one. The
okay.
Quran says that Muhammad split the moon in half. Do you believe that?
No, I don't believe in that.
Right.
No.
But why not though? Because it says
Like,
so in the Quran.
like, like,
Why don't you believe the
like,
Quran?
because there will be no Quran without the Bible. Like that's just true. 'Cause the Bible
That's not
preceded the Quran by
Bat
700
God.
years.
That God, that's not the point because the Quran says that the Bible is wrong. So why don't you believe the Quran?
Basically, the Quran comes from Ishmael. You know, Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Like Ishmael is where Islam comes from, and Isaac is where Israel, the Bible, comes from. Like God told Abraham that he would make his promise with Isaac, and then like the reason why there is so much conflict between Israel and the Palestine because of Ishmael and Isaac warring against each other for the past thousands of years. That's where like we are both come from Abraham.
That's not really the question that I asked you, mate.
Hmm.
Why do you think that you shouldn't believe the Quran when it says something like Muhammad split the moon in half, but you should believe something in the Bible, such as Moses parted the Red Sea? There's
Because
not sufficient
because
evidence for either of those claims. Both of those
like
claims are not
oh yeah.
supported by sufficient evidence. So
Well, there's video
why do you
on
not believe the Quran, but you do believe the Bible? Can you see
like
the
because
bias there?
there actually archaeological evidence or from some of the Bible stories being true. Like there's actually a video on my TikTok where they found like horse chariots at the bottom of the Red Sea and whatnot.
Mm. And
They
those were
found at the bottom of
Roman.
the Red Sea. Huh?
There's also a train down there. Do you think
Yeah.
that the only way that a train could have gotten down there is by the sea being parted and then someone drove the train down there?
No. No.
Exactly. The problem is, back God, is that things get to the bottom of the ocean via methods other than the sea being parted, those things being put there, and then the sea going back together again. That's not the only explanation. Not to mention that there are those chariots and those shields and swords and things that they were found there. There's Roman stuff all throughout that collection as well. Do you see that evidence doesn't support what's in the Bible? Also, do you
But they'll be
recognize
a
that
scientist too.
evidence is different to proof? Do you recognize that?
Yes, yeah, I do recognize that. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Like,
right.
what makes those scientists wrong that found that? Okay, yeah, okay. Like, what made those scientists, those archaeologists, wrong, and like them saying that, oh, we found these at the bottom of the Red Sea, and then someone comes along saying, no, you're wrong. Like, someone who has a bias against the Bible said no, who has an
No,
agenda
no,
against the Bible says
no,
no, you're wrong. This is not, this is not,
no.
no.
I'm not saying that we don't believe the people that found those artifacts. What I'm saying is that finding those artifacts there doesn't prove that they got there the way the Bible says they did. Okay?
But you
It
got
could
to
have
admit
gotten there so many
that
other ways. There are
but
like you
you
could
got to
just
admit
say that a
that
ship
it is a possibility
carrying
though.
military personnel crashed, and that's how you've
No,
got
no,
all
no.
of these because that happens around the globe. That we've got the same kind of evidence in other parts of the world, mate. Right?
But it was
So
Egyptian like it was
when
Egyptian.
ships carrying soldiers capsize or get shipwrecked,
Yeah, you're right.
all of their armor and weaponry and anything else that they're carrying that sinks to the bottom of the ocean.
Mm.
That same thing is just as likely to have happened in that particular part of the Red Sea as it happened anywhere else on the planet. Back
Okay.
God, I'm really sorry to do this. I've just recognized what the time is. I actually have to go. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna
Me
have to
too, man.
wrap
Me
it
too.
up.
Great talk, man. Great talk. But like, you gonna play guitar, right?
Truly. Yeah, a
I play
little
guitar
bit, you
too,
know.
man. Yeah, I
Hey,
play guitar too, man. So
love
like
that.
that's how we vibe so well, man. We both guitarists, man. So we know. Yeah, that's why we vibe so well, man. I played
Maybe.
14 years, man. 14 years I've been playing. Yeah, exactly, man.
Man, I'm impressed, dude.
Music. Yeah,
That's some commitment.
yeah. 14 years. I'm going on 15 years, man. Real talk.
Hey, honestly, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, I'm incredibly grateful for your time.
Thank you for you, man. Thank you for your
Especially,
time too.
yeah, I really don't see that there's any s- particularly good evidence that there's going to be more time after this life. That makes your time
Oh,
incredibly valuable to me. So thanks
exactly,
for sharing,
exactly.
mate. Thank you
No
so
problem, man.
much.
And thank God, and God bless you, man. And I'm praying for you, man, because the truth is that Jesus is King, and that we all need to repent and come to the truth that Jesus is King, that He's coming back soon. The Book of Revelation is literally being played out in front of our eyes, that people don't even see it, man. Like that's what's crazy, man. Real talk.
Maybe.
Well, like, but I digress, man. I digress. Like we agree to disagree, man. Like we both value each other as human beings. We both care about each other. So we just leave it at that.
That much
Amen,
is
brother.
true. I agree with
hmm
that for sure.
hmm Amen, brother. So have a
Take
great
care,
day.
man. You
Peace.
too. You too. Respect. A lovely guy. I'm so sorry, everyone. I have to go. But um, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Like I said, I'm incredibly grateful for your time. It is the most valuable thing that I think any of us have. Please enjoy the rest of your day, your night, your week, your month, your year, your decade, your century, your millennium, whatever. Please soak it up. I think it's probably all you got. I'll give you 10 seconds. Anyone who wants to follow or just double tap the screen to see what we can get to, let's go. I'll give you that 10-second countdown. To everyone in here right now, all 250 of you, thank you so much. To anyone who's gifted and anyone who subscribed today, thank you so much. I'll do my best with it to just improve this environment and add to it as best I can. Thank you so much. I'll give you the 10 seconds. Let's hit it. We're at 31.3. Let's go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Look at that. That's 2K likes, and I counted real fast today too. That's incredible. You're my favorites. I love you so much. Also, head on over to the YouTube channel. I'm going to upload this as soon as I can. How good's that? We've got a YouTube channel now. Big love. Take care. See you next time.